everybody, and welcome back to D-Ray's Shop. Today on the lift I've got a 2004 Honda TRX300 Rancher 4-wheel drive. Customer brought it in with dragging front brakes. It's a pretty common problem that I see on these older Hondas anymore, any of the models that have hydraulic drum brakes. Everything from your TRX300s all the way up to your early model 650 Rincons. Typically what happens is over a period of time moisture gets in the brakes, it corrodes wheel cylinders internally, causes them to drag, so now your shoes don't retract all the way. And replacing all the wheel cylinders, the shoes, and possibly even the drums if they're damaged can get pretty expensive. So a lesser expensive alternative is to convert these over to hydraulic disc brakes, which has a whole lot more advantages. I mean, all your modern ATVs all have disc brakes on them. They don't require adjustment, water doesn't really affect them, they're just a lot better. Super ATV makes a kit for a lot of your Honda models, and so that's what we're going to be installing on this machine today. So let's get started. I've got our Super ATV disc brake conversion kit all unpacked here. There's our calipers, mounting brackets, the rotors, the adapters, and then all of our hardware. So let's go over to the machine, start taking the wheels off. One thing to keep in mind when you're considering putting a disc brake conversion kit on a Honda like this is your wheels. Now, according to Super ATV, their kit will work with any 12-inch or larger steel wheel. Some of your Hondas have factory 12-inch wheels, but they're aluminum. If so, you may run into a clearance problem with the caliper hitting the inside of the rim. If so, for some applications, you can actually remove just a little bit of material from the edge of the caliper to gain clearance. Or you can do like this customer here has. They've put some ITP Delta wheels on here, so we should not have any clearance problems with this one. Now we're going to remove the brake drum, and in order to do that, you got to take these two 6mm bolts out that have 8mm heads. Now we got the bolts out of the way, we'll take a composition hammer, tap the brake drum a few times and get it jarred loose. There you go. Well, she looks good and corrody on the inside, don't it? Next we're going to remove the cotter pin and the castle nut so we can take the hub off. We're about to remove the brake panel, but before we do, I want to go ahead and take the banjo bolt off that goes to our brake line. And I've got me a little catch pan here to catch the fluid in. Also, we've got this vent line for the old brake system. I'm just going to nip it off right up here where the clamp is, and we'll just leave the remainder of it up there. There's a little clamp here that holds the vent hose to the brake line. Obviously it's not going to need that anymore, so we'll get that off of there. It's being reluctant. There we go, discard that. We'll leave that there. Alright, we'll just let that drain. So now we're going to remove the brake panel. I'm going to draw you in there a little closer so you can see. That brake panel is held in by 4 8mm bolts with 12mm heads. We'll just take those off. I've temporarily reinstalled the hub and the axle nut here. The reason why I want to do that, now that all this other stuff is out of the way, give me a chance to make sure that we don't have any excessive play in the bearings, because if so, then we need to go ahead and remove the knuckle and replace the bearings and seals. Our bearings and seals are good here, so while I've got this hub on here, I'm going to take me a wire brush and take a few minutes to kind of clean some of the dirt and rust and crud off here, so that when we put our caliper bracket on, it'll set flush on the knuckle. Another good reason to do this while you've got the hub on here, you won't get all this rust and dirt and crud past your seals and into your bearings. I'm here at my press and I'm fixing to take these studs out. Now if you don't have access to a press, you can just put this over the jaws of a vise, take a socket, put over the lug nut there and drive it on out that way, but since I do have access to a press, I just like to use it. Now we're going to reassemble our hub with our new rotor, an adapter plate, and the studs and spacers. And before I get started on this, I was noticing that the spacers fit really loose on those studs. A lot of slop there. And I know once you get it all tightened down, it's going to be fine, but my OCD just will not allow that to fly. So what I did is I dug around in my toolbox and I come up with this. This is just some spiral wrap for wrapping wiring harnesses and cables and such. Best I can tell, it's roughly 3/8 inside diameter. You can get that just about any electrical supply, or I'm sure you can find it on Amazon, places like that. So what I did is I cut it into sections that were just slightly shorter than the collar, so that when I put my collar on there, ta-da, well look at that, perfect. And once it all tightens down, it'll all be centered. It'll still work just fine, but that'll put my OCD to bed properly. So let's get all this put together. Now one other thing, these rotors will go on either direction, so it doesn't really matter, but there again my OCD gets in the way. The cooling holes that are drilled in the rotor will work in either direction, but if you don't pay attention, one of them's going to be going one way, the other wheel will be going the other way. Not going to matter, my OCD just don't let it fly. So the way I'm going to orient this is our left front hub, so I'm going to have it toward the direction in normal travel is going to be going this direction, okay? Keep that in mind when we do the other side. So what we'll start with is we'll take a bolt, drop it through the rotor, then we're going to put on some of our spiral wrap, push it all the way down, put a spacer collar on it, okay? Now that will go through the hub like that, then you take your adapter plate and it will thread on to the new stud, as it were. And I'm going to leave that loose until we get all the other three in place, and then we'll tighten all this down. Right. Looks pretty good. And our spacer collars are nice and centered. Boy, don't you just love that. That's what I'm talking about right there. Okay. Now we're getting ready to mount our caliper brackets onto the knuckle. Now the brackets left and right are identical, so there's no way you can mix those up. Calipers, on the other hand, they are directional. You have a right caliper and a left caliper. The difference being, this is our left caliper. This is basically the orientation it's going to set on the machine. And if you'll notice, the bleed screw is above the port where the banjo bolt and the brake line goes. Okay. Same thing with the right side. Right side, bleeder goes up, banjo bolts on the bottom. You can put these either direction, but what you'll find is if you put it in there backwards or on the wrong side, then your caliper is going to be mounted basically like this, where the banjo bolt is going to be above the bleeder. You will not get the air out of the caliper, and it will not work. So be sure and pay attention to that when you get ready to install the calipers. Okay, so let's go back to the steering knuckle and let's get this bracket put on.